So welcome everybody to this meeting of the Charter Trustees, virtual AGM of Poole Charter Trustees, and to the press and members of the public who are viewing this live stream. Just a few housekeeping arrangements for the meeting. Please note that this meeting is being recorded for live and subsequent broadcast, and it will be published on the Council website for at least 6 months. In order to ensure the meeting is managed effectively, please could everyone follow these ground rules for speaking. Only speak when invited to by me as chairman. If I haven't introduced you by name, will you please state your name, because some people are coming in by phone and do not see the pictures. Sorry, my screen's frozen, I can't move on. I'm now sharing screens. Yeah, mute your microphone when you're not speaking. If you want to speak, will you please type RTS, request to speak, in the instant message conversation panel on the left-hand side of your screen, and then click the arrow button which will send it in. Please note that everybody on the call can see what you write. Where there appears to be a consensus in the meeting for a motion, I'll ask if there's any dissension from the motion. If you wish to vote against the motion, please type against in the instant message conversation panel. Otherwise, the motion will be agreed without a vote. If we need to have a formal vote, this will be carried out by roll call, asking each person for a response of for, against, or abstain. If by any chance this connection is lost during the meeting, the Deputy Mayor will take the chair in my absence. Finally, please ensure that all background noise is kept to a minimum as far as possible, and mobile phones and other devices are switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. Thank you. So, I hand over to the Clerk Graham for apologies, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have had apologies from Councillor John Beasley, Councillor LJ Evans, Councillor Nicola Green, Councillor Karen Rampton. I believe Councillor Felicity Rice is likely to be late, but she will try and attend. And we've had apologies from Councillor Mark Robson.
Thank you. Now we move on to item 2, declarations of interest. Have there been any declarations of interest?
None received.
Thank you. Before we get on to the rest of the agenda, item 3 and onwards, I'd like to pause and remember our late colleague, Councillor Parish. Pete was only elected to the BCP Council in May last year, but he was a long-standing member of the team on Camford Heath and was well known for his community involvement. A formal time of remembrance will take place at the next full council meeting in September, but now let us just take a few moments' silence to remember him.
Request to speak from Anne Stribley,
yeah,
and then from Tony Trent as well.
Okay. So we now move on to item 3 and 4 and 5, which is the election of the Charter Mayor, Sheriff and Deputy Mayor for the ensuing...
Madam Mayor, I'm wishing to make a point of order before we get to that issue.
Thank you. I'll take that point of order.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I refer to Standing Orders 2, A, B and C, Standing Order 6 and later Standing Order 10F. It is a requirement that there should be at least 2 ordinary meetings during the year. I don't think that's been had. I have been requesting an ordinary meeting of the Charter of Trustees since early March and have had no acknowledgement of that, nor has it happened, because I think we could all anticipate the situation we are in now, where your year has been cut short, the civic year this year, over the last 12 months, has been cut very short, and the coming civic year will probably be even shorter. And I was therefore going to put a motion to the Charter of Trustees on this issue, that the current civic party should continue for the ensuing year, making it a more reasonable effort for yourself, and also making sure that the subsequent year was not again like yours been spoilt and turning out to be just a few months. Obviously it would depend on the civic party being prepared to continue in that, but I wish to raise that. I had asked the clerk to the trustees for that to be considered. I had asked for a meeting and I had copied you in, and sadly I've had no satisfactory response, so I'm really disappointed. But if I can make that proposal now, I will do so.
I think, Councillor Stribley, you've strayed off the original point of order, but on the point of order, if my memory serves me correct, we had a meeting in October and another one in January, but no doubt one of the officers can correct me on that.
Karen, are you able to confirm the dates of meetings?
Madam Mayor, the items I asked for discussion at those meetings and have asked for throughout the year have not been put on an agenda, nor have we had an opportunity to discuss them, but I'm prepared to leave those till later in the meeting. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, just to clarify, it's Karen Tompkins, Deputy Head of Democratic Services. Yeah, you are correct. We had a meeting of the Poole Charter Trustees meeting in October last year and a meeting in January of this year.
So we have had the 2 requisite minimum meetings.
But both times with a limited agenda where the points we sought were not able to be debated. Thank you.
So,
Thank you.
I think I heard from Councillor Stribley a proposal that the existing mayoral team continue for a further 12 months. I think that was.
I did, but that wasn't a point of order technically, because I know there are others who wish to make a motion along similar lines. So can we put that in abeyance, Councillor Stribley? I note that you have made that motion, and thank you very much, and also hand over to those who have also indicated that they would like to make a motion on similar lines.
Councillor O'Neill, I'm quite happy to second Councillor Stribley's motion.
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to speak on this?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I do think that when I saw this agenda, I was rather surprised that the agenda seemed to have not taken into account conversations that had gone in beforehand along the lines that Councillor Stribley was mentioning. And I know that everyone who was potentially up for civic office was consulted on it, and I think there was unanimous agreement that it seemed inappropriate to have the changeover because you know, so much of the year has been missing. But I'm rather surprised that there wasn't a different item 2 on this agenda that posed this question first before we actually had it appear on the agenda, because I'd agreed as Sheriff-elect, I'd agreed to second Mayor-elect Julie Bagwell, and So, it just seems strange that the agenda was done in the way it was, and that perhaps there might have been an informal meeting of this nature before this annual general meeting, so to speak. But I'm more than happy as one of those who was potentially going to take office this year for it to be delayed until next May, because the existing incumbents haven't had a full year, and if there were any changes, a new mayor and sheriff would have significantly less than a full year. So yeah, I'm happy to go along with what's been suggested, but it should have really have been on the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Tony. The clerk wishes to say something.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I mean, clearly there's some learning about process, and we'll pick up any outstanding issues that Councillor Stribley has asked to be on the agenda. But in terms of the agenda, I think technically you probably do need to elect the mayor and deputy mayor and sheriff for that period. I think that sort of technically is the function of the AGM. The fact that a number of people are proposing the same mayoral team continuing, I think technically is probably the right way to do it, but we can do that as a single motion now for agenda items 3, 4 and 5, in my view, so we can take that whole team in one go if that's helpful.
Thank you. That's what I imagined would happen if the motion was proposed in the form I was expecting it might be. Can I call on Councillor Bagwell now?
Hello, everybody. Yeah, my proposal was.
Madam Mayor, sorry to really interrupt on this, but surely a motion should be debated and decided before other items.
Don't worry about me, anyone.
So I'm assuming
this is on the same item, I'm sure. Councillor Bagwell.
Yes, I was gonna propose that the mayoral party stayed the same as it is now, and that Tony and I take over as mayor and sheriff next year. It seems logical. You've done a brilliant job, and it just seemed logical to me. So yeah, and I'm going to pass over to Councillor Butt so as she can propose it, because it seemed wrong for me to propose it as the sheriff.
It just so happens that Councillor Butt was next on my list, so that's fine.
I know. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I think that everybody's come to the conclusion that the best way forward is to keep the present incumbents for the ensuing municipal year until 2021. Also, with grateful thanks to them for the job that they have done. It's been very difficult for them, very exceptional circumstances. They did lose out to a certain extent, and the end of the mayoralty is always the very special time, and neither the mayor nor the sheriff have been able to celebrate that. So I think a big vote of thanks for them dealing with that so admirably. We have two things on the agenda today. The first being that we need to continue with the present incumbents until 2021, and then to ensure that the mayor and sheriff-elect, who have already been constitutionally and formally appointed to take over in 2021, do just that at the AGM May 2021. So I think we have two things on the agenda. Councillor Stribby's already alluded to one. I completely agree with Councillor Stribby. I think she's absolutely right that we do defer. I was just trying to put some clarity in there, and Councillor Bagwell asked me to do that on her behalf because she didn't feel, as a present incumbent, that she wanted to raise the matter. I hope.
Thank you, Councillor Butt. So thank you for your kind words to the team. I haven't got anyone else who is indicating they wish to speak. So this is a case, if anyone is against the continuation of the Civic Party for the next, until May 2021, not for the next year, because it's not a whole year. The election of the new team for May 2021 onwards will be confirmed at the Charter Trustees meeting in about February. So we know who is scheduled to be. I can't imagine anyone will want to go back on that. But the formal decision, the formal vote, will be taken at that meeting in probably February. So if there's anyone who does not agree with the proposal, the motion that the current civic party, the current civic team, should continue until May 2021. Will they please write against or no or something in the conversation?
Just had a further request to speak from Councillor Butt. Councillor Judy Butt.
Judy, would you?
Yes, thank you so much, Madam Mayor. Thank you so much. I just wanted clarity on that. We are going to continue with the present incumbents until May 2021. We have constitutionally elected and appointed the Sheriff and Mayor-elect for this ensuing year, but we're going to bumper year, so to speak. So I want an assurance that it will be Councillor Bagwell and Councillor Trent who will be taking civic office in May 2021, with, of course, the Deputy Mayor, which would be your good self, Madam Mayor. Thank you. We could have some clarity on that.
Assuming Councillor Bagwell and Councillor Trent and I are all happy to take up those roles, yes.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. That gives me great assurance. Thank you.
Just to confirm, I don't think you can technically guarantee that, because I don't think you can bind the Charter Trustees as at that date. But I think there is an understanding amongst all those members that are present that that's what will happen.
So, has anyone? No one has indicated that they're against that motion.
No. Sorry, Councillor Stribley.
So Councillor Stribley wishes to say something.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Very briefly, I don't object in principle to what was previously said, but as you rightly say, it can't be tied. The decision won't be made until the provisional decision next February and at the AGM next May, as is always the case. I can't imagine anybody objecting or voting against the proposals, but you never know what might have happened between now and then. The current incumbents might have changed their minds or all sorts of other things. So I just think Councillor Butt's proposal was a shade too far, but I can't imagine anybody wishing to change that at the end. So I think the people who were proposed in and provisionally elected in February should have no concerns or worried about carrying on in 2021, all things being equal, of course.
Right, thank you very much, Councillor Stribley. So we've had nobody indicating that they are against the motion, so that is now carried. So the current civic team stay in place until May 2021. So that's myself as Mayor, Councillor Judy Bagwell as Sheriff and Councillor Brian Dean as Deputy Mayor. And thank you very much for your vote of confidence, which I take it as such. So we move on to item 6, which is the appointment of representatives to the Association of Charter Trustees. Councillor Tony Trent has indicated that he would be interested. I believe we have a proposal for him.
Councillor Mike Brooke wishes to speak.
Fine, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to simply propose Councillor Trent as our representative on the Association of Charter Trustees for the next year. Thank you.
Thank you. And is there a seconder? Do we need a seconder?
Happy to second, Madam Mayor, if nobody else is seconding.
Okay, thank you. So, if no one indicates...
There's nothing there.
No one's indicated they're against that. So, Councillor Tony Trent is our representative on the Association of Charter Trustees from now till May 2021, presumably. We also should be choosing a substitute. I don't think anyone has indicated that they are interested in the role. My memory is that actually Councillor Tony Trent was substitute last year, and the representative was LJ Evans, who is not present and hasn't indicated any interest. So I don't know where we stand.
Request from Councillor Daniel Butt.
Oh, Councillor Daniel Butt.
Could I request to be the seconder on that one? A substitute, sorry.
I think you could. Is anyone willing to propose?
Councillor Broadhead and Councillor Miller have both indicated to speak.
Right, Councillor, which one first? Broadhead first. Councillor Philip Broadhead.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm happy to propose Daniel Butt in that position.
Thank you. And Councillor Miller?
Happy to second that, thank you.
Thank you very much. So again, as long as nobody in the next few seconds writes against in the message box, Daniel Butt is the substitute. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
So we now move on to the appointment of budget signatories. The current ones are Councillors Marcus Andrews and Tony O'Neill. Both have indicated that they're willing to continue.
So proposed, Madam Mayor.
A request to speak from Councillor Richard Burton.
So Councillor Richard Burton wishes to speak.
Yes, I would like to, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to propose Councillor Marcus Andrews.
Thank you very much.
Does Councillor Stribley wish to second then? Or
anyone to second?
I'm happy to second, Madam Mayor, and to propose Councillor Tony O'Neill as well.
So you're seconding Marcus Andrews and proposing Tony O'Neill. So we need a seconder for Councillor Tony O'Neill.
I'll second that.
Was that Councillor Trent?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now we move on to the calendar of meeting dates, which is possibly a flexible calendar, knowing what's happened so far this year. The dates set provisionally are the 26th of August, the 28th of October, the 27th of January, so that will be the Mayor and Sheriff voting evening, and the 21st of May. The first three meetings at 5 p.m, the 21st of May at 11 a.m, because that will be Mayor making. If all goes to plan.
I wonder if we could just ask Karen Tompkins just to explain the reasoning behind those. We had a question last night at the Bournemouth Trust Trustees and the explanation was so clear, it really helped.
Thank you, Graham. Just for clarity, the scheduled meeting in August is a requirement in the context of we have external auditors who will audit our accounts. So there's certain statutory deadlines that we're required to comply with, and those are at the end of August. So if members can agree to that August date, that would be, I would be very grateful. In relation to the next meeting in October, that provides an opportunity for other chartered trustee business for consideration, together with an opportunity to review mid-year the budget. The January meeting is the setting of the budget for the forthcoming year and reviewing the out-term position. And as the Mayor has quite rightly indicated, the meeting is in May is effectively the AGM is the Mayor making meeting. So hopefully that provides some clarity.
Thank you. I assume everybody is happy with those dates. Obviously we can't at the moment know how things are going to pan out, but the August one in particular is obviously as it's the first that comes anyway, but it's the one that is legally necessary in the current context. So I've got no indication that anybody is not happy with that. So could we go back to Councillor Stribley for her point of order number 6?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Point of order number 6 is about order of precedence in procession. The point of the Charter of Trustees.
Can I just interrupt? We settled the order of precedence at a previous meeting.
Well, I wish to raise it now because I don't recall any discussion on the order of precedence. I do remember at the first meeting you informed us that we were sitting in alphabetical order because that seemed to be the best idea, and I don't recall any discussion on it since then.
I'm interrupting again, Councillor Stribley, because this is not a point of order, and in fact at the meeting that the issue was raised, and I think it was probably the February one, but I wouldn't like to be sure, we did have a thorough discussion of the subject. It was thoroughly aired.
Well, I would like it aired again, and I would wish for it to go on an agenda because either I wasn't present or I have no recollection whatsoever of that discussion.
That will be added to the August agenda then. Thank you. Did you say May Haynes?
Yes, May Haynes.
Councillor May Haynes wishes to speak
Withdraw RTS, Madam Mayor. I was actually going to second the proposal for Councillor Tony O'Neill as signatory, so it's redundant now.
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't get to you in time.
Councillor Vicky Slade.
Councillor Vicky Slade.
Yeah, just to clarify, I recall actually debating this with Councillor Stribley and supporting and introducing a proposal about length of service on Borough of Poole, actually taking precedence with then Borough length of service on BCP afterwards. So I'm sure if we check the minutes, we will see that this was actually agreed, and Councillor Stribley was definitely there because it was the same meeting we discussed the budget. So I recall there being a conversation about both. So Councillor Stribley was definitely there because I debated it with her and supported her position.
Thank you. That confirms my memory that it was definitely thoroughly debated and the meeting came to a conclusion. So we can put it on the August agenda, but I'm not sure there's any point. Just to confirm what's already been decided. Could I call on Karen Tompkins, who wishes to, I hope, confirm the minutes?
Just to clarify, yeah, my understanding is it was discussed at the January meeting this year, and an agreed position was supported by the Charter Trustees as identified by Councillor Slade. I'm happy to circulate that to all members for clarity if that's helpful.
We were both going to suggest that, so yes, I think that would be a good idea. And if there's a significant number of Charter Trustees who are not happy with what was decided on that occasion, we will put it on the August agenda. But hopefully it won't be necessary, but we shall see.
Thank you very much.
Just confirm those dates are agreed.
So nobody seems to have objected to any of those dates. The August one is the key one. The later ones, who knows, may have to be flexible. But in principle, those dates or thereabouts will be the dates of the meetings. So now we move on to item 9, the adoption of BCP Council financial regulations. So could I ask the Charter Trustees to confirm the approach as set out on the agenda, which is that the Charter Trustees, is the right wording, follow the BCP Council it's not there. Very efficient. The note on the agenda, for the avoidance of doubt, the Charter Trustees have operated in accordance with the BCP Council financial regulations, and until such time as they adopt their own financial regulations, this practice will continue. So I would ask the Charter Trustees to confirm this approach. Again, please write in the conversation box if you don't agree. Write no or against.
Nothing showing.
Right, no, nobody put anything, so I will take it that everybody's happy with that. Thank you. Now we come on to item 10, delegation to the Chief Executive as Honorary Clerk to the Charter Trustees. So, are the Charter Trustees willing to agree to formally appoint the Chief Executive, Graham, of BCP Council as the Honorary Clerk to Charter Trustees, and that he be delegated authority to act on behalf of the Charter Trustees to take all necessary actions and decisions which are not reserved to the Charter Trustees as a body? Again, if you're not happy with that decision, will you write against in the conversation box?
Councillor Diana Butler is requested to speak.
Councillor Butler wishes to speak. Councillor Butler?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yeah, it was just one question really, the added bit about delegated authority to the Honorary Clerk. I wasn't too sure about that part. Can you clarify that for me?
It's delegated authority to act on our behalf to take all necessary actions and decisions which aren't reserved to us. So, Graham, if you could perhaps clarify the sort of thing that might include.
Just trying to think if there are other things. It could be a financial decision if the signatories need something ordered. It would be routine, it would not be significant. I was just thinking, Karen or Richard, have we exercised that delegation at all this year?
Sorry, it's Karen Tompkins here. Just to clarify, I would agree with you, Graham, it would be those more operational issues. those matters that were required charter trustee approval, then obviously they would be reserved to the charter trustees. I'm not aware specifically that we've been in that position up until now, but happy to do some checks and feedback if that's necessary.
I think the assurance we can give the charter trustees, if we were to exercise those delegations, we'd be reporting them to subsequent meetings. So you'd be very aware of it.
Again, has anybody indicated?
No hand Anger.
So, Councillor Anger wishes to speak.
Yeah, thank you. I think just further to what Councillor Butler was saying, I think there's probably a large element of trust here, which I'm willing to sort of, put in here and go along with. I think probably the absence of anything written down on this, the terms of reference of that delegation doesn't leave me entirely comfortable. I think the context for this is I do find our charter trustees meetings tend to be very high level, more kind of ceremonial and more sort of trying to find the right words, but almost kind of just probably, things going through on the nod. Whereas I think things which are much more about the doing and the operational, I'd have a concern in principle that too much of that is kind of out of sight completely and not coming around the table of the charter trustees. So I'll go along with this, but probably what could get recorded here is something ought to be documented about the terms of reference of that delegation, please.
I imagine, but I'll be corrected by the officers, that this wording is taken from the Standard Charter Trustees national documents.
Yes, I think it is, and also bearing in mind that the Charter Trustees themselves is largely a ceremonial role. I can't think of where we've exercised this delegation or what the executive powers might be, but this is simply those that are anything not reserved to the Charter Trustees of the body. So maybe Karen and I, Richard, will do a note and circulate it around as to what these issues might cover and anything we've looked at over the last year, so if we can give that clarity. That
would be helpful, yes.
I don't recall ever being approached as the clerk to the Charter Trustees in order to carry out an executive function on behalf of the Charter Trustees, which is why I'm struggling with thinking what some examples.
Yeah. Graham, sorry to interrupt. Is it appropriate for me to comment?
Yes.
Carry on.
Just to highlight, I referred to our August meeting where we have been going through, or we will be going through, an external audit and sign off accounts. There'll be annual governance statements. So there's an audit process associated with the reason for arranging that meeting. We have been, in our first year, the subject of an internal audit. And obviously, internal auditors will identify recommendations and certain actions that we need to take. And this is one of them. So we will then be in a position to provide more detail to the Charter Trustees at the meeting in August on this, and indeed maybe other issues that have been identified. So if that provides some assurance, I just wanted to provide that clarity.
So,
yes, thank you very much, Karen Tompkins. That's very useful. So again, I have nobody against.
Just send this help clarity.
Yeah. So again, nobody has indicated they are not happy with this decision, in essence. So thank you very much. And we move on to item 11, which is headed Appointment of Officers in accordance with standing orders. So, in fact, it's only one officer as far as I can see. We're asked to agree that BCP Council Deputy Section 151 Officer Dan Povey be appointed as the responsible financial officer for the Charter Trustees. We have to have some named individual to take that role. So the suggestion is that it should be Dan Povey.
No comments appearing, nobody arguing against.
Right, so I take it that everybody's happy. Deathly silence. I'm sure everybody's happy. Thank you very much.
Karen has just indicated.
Just for clarification, members, again, that's part of the process to make sure that we've got our governance arrangements in place, and there's a requirement to have a financial officer, a responsible financial officer.
Thank you. So that brings us on to the last item. Any other business? No, nobody has raised any other business.
Request to speak from Councillor Brooks. Actually, Councillor Butler's just come in regarding item 11.
Oh, right. We better come back to Councillor Butler's a bit later on item 11.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to ask, as a new councillor, I don't know Dan Povey, and I don't know how many other councillors do. Can any councillor give a few words about him for us? Thank you.
I must admit I haven't met him, so I don't know whether anybody else among the Charter Trustees does know him. I'm hoping somebody will say yes.
Madam Mayor, it's Councillor Haynes here.
Thank you.
I have prior and in the former. Sorry, Madam Mayor, my apologies. Can I speak about Dan Povey?
Yes.
Before I go ahead. Yes, I've had the pleasure of actually doing work with Dan Povey prior to BCP Council being formed. I worked with him when we did the disaggregation work. He was formerly, I think, part of the finance team when it was East Dorset and Christchurch together. So he comes highly recommended. He was interviewed and he's now the number two, one of the number twos to our Section 151 officer, Adam Richards. So he's got very good credentials. So I'm personally very happy that he has agreed to take that post on. So hopefully that would actually provide some assurance, Madam Mayor, to other members who have not actually met Mr. Povey. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I've also got Councillor Brown wishing to speak.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, in my position as Cabinet Member for Finance, I have regular contact with Dan Povey, probably almost on a weekly basis recently. And yeah, I've always found him very informed, very knowledgeable and very capable. So yes, I'm happy to sort of support his nomination.
Okay, thank you. Well, we've had two good testimonials on his behalf. Councillor Slade also wishes to speak.
Just to briefly add that I believe that Mr. Povey acts in this position for Seascape, one of our subsidiaries, so that's probably a very good work across, and I certainly can recommend the work that he's been doing with that has been of a very high quality.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Jude Butt.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry, I must press the button. It's very good to hear good things about this gentleman, but I know absolutely nothing about the gentleman. And if it is a sort of a competition, so to speak, or that he has to prove his worth to be appointed this, it may have been useful to have had some form of CV telling us a little bit about him. I have every confidence. I've heard from my colleagues and I trust their judgment. But to me, it was more appointing a person to do the job who happened to be Mr. Povey, rather than bringing into any form of consideration whether Mr. Povey was able to do the job. So I'm not quite sure what I'm being asked to do here. I'm happy to support Mr. Povey, having heard from my colleagues, but if we were to be judging him to be able to do the job, it may have been useful to have had some form of CV so we could judge for ourselves before we got here this evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Point noted. But I still have no one indicating that they are not happy with the appointment. So the appointment is made, will be made, is made. We come on to item 12. I haven't been notified of any other business. So I can declare the meeting.
Councillor Mike Brooke.
Oh, Councillor Mike Brooke.
Fine, thank you, Madam Mayor. Sorry to raise this again, but at the January meeting, when we were discussing the budget, there was an unresolved issue with regard to claiming or not being able to claim VAT back. I don't believe that we've actually had an answer to that particular issue at this point in time. I was wondering whether you or any of the officers could confirm that the VAT situation has been resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brooke. I've just had a very good suggestion put to me that we ask Mr. Povey, Dan Povey, to bring a report to the August meeting on that issue. It's only, after all, not much more than a month away. So
that would be fine.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I think Karen Tompkins may just indicate.
Yeah, sorry, just to clarify, you've obviously just confirmed we would be anticipating bringing that particular item back to the Charter Trustees in August in any event.
Thank you very much. Okay, so there's no further any other business, so I declare the meeting closed. Thank you all for coming and have a good evening.
Thank you.